Excellent. We'd like to call to order the Pickering School Building Committee. Roll call, please.
Hold on. A couple people joining. Okay, Mayor Nicholson,
Present.
Brian Castellanos, Deb Ruggiero, I know she's Diana Charcutis,
Present.
Flory Makua,
Present.
Jessica Gerardo, Jim Ridley,
Present.
John Ford, Joe Smart,
Present.
Karen Miller,
Present.
Kevin Ritterhouse, Lauren Drago, Lorraine Gately, Michael Bertino,
Present.
Michael Donovan, Molly Cohen,
Present.
Peter Koulakidis. He's actually joining right now, so. Give him a second to get on. And Lorraine Gately is also joining, and Kevin Ritterhouse is also joining. I'll go back. Kevin Ritterhouse,
Present.
Lorraine Gately. Lorraine, we're calling roll. Peter Koulakidis.
Present.
Present.
Thank you, Lorraine. Rich Marlin,
Present.
Rick Starboard,
Present.
Stephen Smith, Tom Mannion, Mayor McGee,
Present.
Wayne Losey. That's all. Okay, welcome everyone. Let me see if I can share the presentation for tonight. Having a hard time. Can everyone see the presentation?
No.
No.
I'm not sure what's wrong. How about now?
Looks like it's voting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, first up on the agenda tonight will be our administrative actions. And we'll be looking for approval of the January 19th meeting minutes. I believe it might be the January 18th meeting minutes, but we'll give you a quick budget update, and we'll be asking for a vote on budget revision request number 2. I'll explain that later, but MSBA requires that the school building committee take a vote on that. Then we'll give you a quick overview of the preferred schematic report, which is the phase that we're currently in, an update on the space summary, and design progress to date. And then we'll round up by talking a little bit about the schedule, meeting schedule, as well as the preferred schematic milestone schedule as we move forward. So with that, first up is the vote on the January 18th, 2023 SBC meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Aye.
Aye.
Next is the status of our budget for the feasibility study. We have expended 24% and we're at approximately 35% through the feasibility study. And we have committed 85% of the budget for the various due diligence site work that we're doing currently in this phase. This budget also includes the budget revision request number 2, where we have committed some of those funds that you'll see for translation services, as well as interpretation services for the public forums that we had during the PDP phase, as well as the printing and mailing of the notifications to abutters of the sites that we had under consideration. This is a quick look at the cash flow. We're spending a little less than we had projected, but we're on track with where we should be in the budget. This is the budget revision request number 2. These services were paid by left field, and in order for us to get paid back for these services, we have to amend our contract. And this is the mechanism through MSBA in which we amend that contract and align them to the ProPay codes that we submit all invoices for the project to in order for the city to get reimbursed. So this is a request to ask of the SBC to have us move the $3,939.36 from our contingency budget to the OPM feasibility study and schematic design budget line. Once we make that move, it leaves $233,561 left in our contingency. Does anyone have any questions before I ask for a vote?
Motion to move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And then Lynn, could you please just check the weight room and see if there's anyone?
Okay, yes, sorry. When I'm in presentation mode, I can't see the weight room. I have to, here we go. Looks like Deb Ruggiero, Mayor McGee, and Tom Mannion had to rejoin.
Okay.
Okay. So next, a quick overview of the preferred schematic report. As we did last time with the preliminary design program, we will be submitting a report to MSBA at the end of this phase, and the contents of which are a final evaluation of the existing conditions of the existing school, but also of the site that we selected. Then there'll be a final evaluation of all the layout alternatives on the site that we selected, and narrowing that down to a preferred solution. And then all the backup to this process, what the local actions were and approvals throughout this phase of the project, as well as MSBA staff review, and then the facilities assessment subcommittee review. Once those are complete, we will gain MSBA board approval to move to the next phase, which is schematic design. So just a little bit about what is in each of these phases. And the first phase is just, we have to review where we've been since we made our PDP submission. Once we receive comments from MSBA, we respond to them, and we include those in the PSR report, as well as provide an updated schedule to note if we've made any changes to the overall schedule of the project during this phase based on conditions that we find on site or other reasons as we evaluate the alternatives that would make us change our mind in regards to schedule. We will provide our final summary of existing conditions as well as alternatives. And we will be asking at the end of this phase for the SBC to pick a preferred solution to move forward with in schematic design. And in schematic design, that's where we really develop the preferred option and to the point where we can establish a firm budget and a firm schedule moving forward. And that's what MSBA will vote on and base their project scope and budget agreement on, which eventually turns into a project funding agreement. Also part of the preferred schematic report is narratives about each of the alternatives. We'll go through an exercise that looks at the pros and cons of each, and similarly to what we did with the site selection process, so that we can narrow those options down to the final. During this phase is also the time where we're doing most of our testing of the site to determine any cost factors related to the site or just placement issues in terms of how we might lay out the building. But we are doing a series of tests that RDA will talk about later on in the presentation currently, but there will be additional testing that will need to be done later on. And at this point, we will identify what that testing may need to be within the PSR report. In addition to all of those, you'll see various options for building footprint, building layout, site layout, playfields, and circulation around the building. We'll look at all potential construction impacts on students at the existing Pickering and Sisson schools, and make sure that we have segregated the sites, show how basically show how we plan to deal with the construction logistics during the building of the school. We'll look at conceptual architectural plans and site layouts and how the organization of spaces line up with the educational program. RDA will have their consultants outline all of the major structural systems as well as the plumbing, HVAC, and electrical, so that to the point that we can get good estimates on these systems as we move forward. And this is the point where we will start to put together proposed project budgets for each of the options, and then the final options. And we'll also look at all of the required permitting requirements and the timelines associated with each of those. We'll go back and take a final look at the educational program and update them based on MSBA's PDP comments, as well as any changes that we have made. There'll be a thorough explanation of the preferred solution as we move forward. This point will also identify what sustainability goals that the district may have for the building, and will provide the final building and site plans as well as project budget and the project schedule. So we'll go over this piece at the end where we associate them with dates, but once we have a deadline to submit the preferred schematic report by, in order to get it in front of the MSBA in time to get on one of their board of directors meeting cycles. We'll talk about the dates later on, but prior to doing that, we also have to meet with the MSBA's facility assessment subcommittee that does the cursory review prior to making a recommendation to the board of directors to approve our our project. So that would be a presentation that the project team, the OPM, and representatives from the city would make to the feasibility assessment subcommittee. Once we pass that point, we'll be ready to go before the MSBA Board of Directors for their approval and authorization to proceed in the final phase, which is the schematic design phase. I know that's a lot of talking, but that's a quick overview of all the things that we have to go through in this next phase to complete the feasibility study report phase of the project. Does anybody have any questions on this phase? You may have questions as Jean starts to get into the various, as we work through the requirements of this phase. But again, that's just a quick overview of what we intend to cover during this phase. Rich, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so as you're going through some of the boring and testing, are you looking at geothermal as a potential for heating this building?
Well, I think that it's a consideration that we will look at. There will be an analysis of several options for heating and cooling systems. And we will come up with a final solution. But at this point, we know we have some cost constraints, so we will look at them and we'd have to evaluate them based on costs.
So I think I brought this up before, and I've actually talked to Jack McCarthy at the School Building Authority. There's 30% direct payments from the Inflation Reduction Act to municipalities for going green. I don't know how that would, that's more, what I've read, it's more for if you take an old existing school and put on solar panels and whatnot, but I'm assuming there's some way that we can figure out how we could get the feds to give us 30% for doing some of these things. And I'm assuming the greener we do it, the better, more money we can get, including solar panels, all that kind of stuff.
We will be looking at that. I do know that we can get rebates, like you say, up to 30%. We just had that on another project of ours.
But I think because we're in Lynn and because they're trying to make sure that economically challenged communities, I think we may actually get more. Quite frankly, I can't understand the formulas when I look at them, but anyway, that might be something we want to look at to get the feds to pay for part of what we're doing, which could obviously hold the cost down.
We will be looking at, like I said, various options, the initial costs and then the life cycle costs of those. And so we'll see what the offset might be for energy efficiency to the initial cost. But we'll be looking at all of those and narrowing it down to an option that works for both the cost and the building. Tom, you have your hands raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my laptop decided to update, so I'm running by phone. I just wanted to get in as present. That's it. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think we have a couple of. Okay. I thought we had some questions in the chat, but they were just comments. So I'm going to turn it over to Gene now to talk a little bit about some updates that he's made to the space summary.
Thanks, Lynn. So we are, we have a pretty good start on all the things that Lynn just went through as far as pulling together data and plans and estimates for the next submission. We, knowing that cost is going to be an issue, we sat with the school administration and left field and went through the space summary because the first place to look to be careful about costs is, are we trying to build too much? So we went through a couple meetings on this, I have to say. I think we did really well. I think the school department was very flexible. And as you can see on the left-hand column there, what we submitted to MSBA in the first phase of the study was a building that was 193,000 square feet. And that's about 11,000 square feet larger than Thurgood Marshall. And you say, why? Well, we were trying to adhere in the most strict manner possible to the goals of the educational plan. Again, thinking about cost, square footage is a direct, has a direct relationship. So we went through the I think it's 5 or 6 pages on this space summary, kind of line by line with the school administration. And the superintendent, assistant superintendent. And we actually identified about 17,000 square feet that we could pull out of the square footage. And we're recommending that the building be 176,000 square feet. That's a little bit smaller than Thurgood Marshall, but we have all the same components, and we've integrated a whole bunch of lessons learned from Thurgood Marshall. So we're very confident that the educational program can be accommodated. It'll be a very successful school. Another thing that we did was we concentrated on trying to make sure that the various categories that MSBA has, they have square footage guidelines. One category might be classrooms, another might be special ed, another might be art and music or physical education. So we went through kind of category by category, and we were actually able to move some spaces around and make some of the reductions so that we got as much, if not all, of the space that you'd be building to be reimbursable space. None of the square footage in a particular category was above what the MSBA guidelines show. So at the end of the day, we came up with a building that matches MSBA guidelines. And again, that's important because anything over the guidelines is 100% city cost. So it maximizes your reimbursement. I think the administrators can speak to it too. It has minimal impact on the programs. And one of the ways that we made sure when we took something out that it didn't impact the program is we made other spaces flexible so that they could accommodate the need.
And it increases utilization of the spaces, which is what MSBA is always striving for. They want us to meet a certain percentage of utilization for each space. And one of the factors for going through this exercise and doing a reduction in square footage is that we began to start looking at the costs of this building and what the building might cost to the city. And again, it's very preliminary, but because we don't have all of the results back in from our borings, test pits, and other site due diligence testing that we've been doing. But we were looking at what the initial impact might be for the city, and with MSBA's new caps and square footage, our adjustments that they have made for eligible costs that occurred last summer, it really with our reimbursement being at 80%, cities and towns are really seeing about an effective rate of about half of what their MSBA reimbursement rate is. So given that, it really pushed the city's share up very high, and being cognizant of trying to avoid going out for a debt exclusion, we wanted to do everything that we could to make sure we were being as efficient as possible with the building and even the site as we move forward. So
Can I just add on to that? So the gym was an area that, Jean mentioned us trying to take space and make it multi-purpose. And so the gym was an area that we were trying to keep the gym large, like Marshall's is, because we're going to have limited outdoor space around Pickering. But we also wanted to include a movement studio and a dance studio for alternatives to just the typical PE class. And so what we did was we expanded the space that the dance studio and the movement studio, and potentially preliminarily design wise, we're talking about putting cabinets in there so that, say, the maker space that we had to eliminate could be multi-used in one of these dance or movement studios. It could, a class could run in there as a maker space if we had the correct storage or materials on a cart, that kind of thing. So that was an example of how we tried to make multi-purpose spaces.
Yeah, and I will say the gymnasium is much larger than the one at Pickering. It will hold a regulation high school basketball court, and of course you can play cross court, and it will have bleachers. So, Thurgood Marshall's was really it's just large. It's 12,000 square feet. So the MSBA standard is 6,000. We made the one at Pickering 7,000, so we could have the high school court and the bleachers. But then, as Deb said, Thurgood Marshall, theoretically, it's all PE, and you might have 4 stations. But now you have a gym with 2 stations and 2 other stations in the movement studio. So you still have the 4 teaching stations, but a little more flexibility, frankly.
Flora, you have your hand raised?
Yes, Jean, is it possible just to maintain the gross square footage that originally was proposed for future growth, but limit the amount of MEP that goes in that space? So it's pretty much just having a shell that can become anything in the future. I don't know exactly if Thurgood Marshall is already full and we need more classes already or not, but I'm just seeing this 30 years from now, we're gonna be looking for more space as the population is growing.
I think one strategy might be to show how you could expand the school in the future, and not spend money now on the shell and all the structure and this and that, but perhaps making sure that the structure could handle another floor on one of the wings, or it could expand horizontally, though we do have to be careful about the MWRA line.
Sure. It
But
seems like it'll be cheaper now compared to 30 years from now if we have that opportunity to do it now.
Yeah, I just think the inflation in the construction area has been really crazy. So
Mhm.
again,
Yeah.
picking up on what Lynn said, we're really, really cognizant that we might want to make sure we can get a school built.
Okay.
So I think if we look at future expansion, how you plug more things into it, that might be the wisest way to go.
Well, also Florrie too, back when we did the Pickering the last time around, it was really proved out that the city could really use a four middle school, 4 middle schools in the district. And, I'm thinking that, if additional space, we may have to, you may need to go back and revisit that 4th middle school in the future.
So this slide is just a summary of where we made some changes and reduced the square footage of the building. We we did have, the sixth grade, we had an extra 3 classrooms plus a science lab when it was compared to the 7th and 8th. Because in the best of all worlds, you'd have smaller class sizes in 6th grade. But Thurgood Marshall has the same, number of students per classroom in 6th, 7th, and 8th. So we went back to that model and we were able to reduce 1 science lab and 3 classrooms. We did have a separate drama classroom, and it was it was going to be non-reimbursable because we had it under the art and music category. So we moved that into the core academic category, and we kind of replaced one of the 5th major classrooms with the drama classroom. And this might be another area where those 2 movement studios, maybe one of them can be used as a flex space for either that other 5th major or for drama. But to be honest, we did want to give drama a home because that was one of the lessons learned at Thurgood Marshall. There was a special education program that was substantially separate, and they're housed at Breed and Thurgood Marshall. So I don't want to, I guess I'll speak for Deb, but correct me if I'm wrong. The thought was that, we could take those out of Pickering, knowing that those programs could be accommodated at the other 2 schools. And then Deb, we discussed decreasing the size of the gym. We did eliminate the PE locker rooms. We felt that the movement studios were much more important. And then, as Deb also mentioned, we eliminated the big maker lab and took it out of the media center category. And then we're going to outfit one of the movement studios with the equipment necessary so it could be used as a maker space.
I think we also said that the function of the locker rooms could be accommodated, like I think visiting teams when you play basketball in the gym could use each of the movement studios as team rooms for various basketball games.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I forgot to say that, Lynn. Thank you. So then we wanted to make sure that we could lay out a building on the site that we have with all those spaces that are in the space summary. So this is not a design. This is what we call a test fit. So it's more about making sure we can arrange spaces and accommodate them. And this will be refined probably a number of times between now and when we make the next submission to MSBA. But we did determine, which is a good thing for the neighborhood and for the cost, that we could accommodate this program in a 4-story school, just like Thurgood Marshall. And you can see the footprint in black. The orange arrow shows where the main entrance to the school would be, and that's so that we could queue parents that are dropping off or picking up. They could come up the left side of the building and then around and drop, the passenger door would be on the right side as they're heading back out to Magnolia. And that's gonna give us a lot of space to take cars off the street. And then we started by thinking about the community spaces, and it's school community, right? Every kid or teacher will be in the cafeteria at some point during the day. And then the gymnasium, that's a community space also. So we wanted to have those kind of facing the pond because it is a very pleasant view. So I'll just run through on the next few slides the various floor plans. To the left side is Magnolia and the view to the pond. So you can see the 2 purple ovals. We have the calf, maybe a 2-sided stage like you have at Thurgood Marshall, and the gymnasium on the left side of the plan. with the two, we're calling them dance in this diagram, but the two movement studios across the hall. And this is where Lynn's saying, they're right across from the gym and they could be used as changing rooms for interscholastic sports. But that whole end of the building could be and will be segregated, so it can be opened up on weekends and used by the community. Then where the orange arrow is, that's into, could be a main lobby. And we have this zone where parents, guardians, visitors can come in and talk to service providers or special education administrators, guidance counselors, et cetera, et cetera. You always want to keep or limit how far a visitor has to go into the school. So, we think we can arrange the front of the building so parents and guardian, visitors, are kind of segregated and don't have to be escorted, up 3 floors and around the corner. The couple lessons learned from Thurgood Marshall, that brown oval in the middle, we have 2 large toilet rooms and we have 2 elevators. The elevators are the little squares with X's in them. And we had dispersed toilets in Thurgood Marshall. We had, boy and girl at the end of each wing. And the way that the staff runs that is there's hall passes and they have to sign in so that the toilet rooms are monitored. And one of the things that we heard was we'd be much better off with 2 large toilet cores on each floor, that could be monitored by 2 people than having 4 cores, which they can't if they don't even have staff to monitor. And then Thurgood Marshall has 1 elevator, but when it's out of service, that is an issue. So we're showing 2. The other thing is the green oval in the upper right. There's a couple of special education programs, life skills and coach. And we didn't have coach at Thurgood Marshall, but we had life skills and they were up on the 2nd floor. And these are kids that have kind of more severe issues, especially, and it can include mobility. So, part of this programming was to try to get those programs down onto the ground floor where they were much more easily accessible. Lynn, do you want to go to the, oh, go ahead.
We have 2 hands raised, Lorraine.
Oh, sorry.
I like to go to the gym. My immediate concern with not having some place for in the gym, you need maybe not a locker room, but children need a place that's sort of private to change and to store their clothing. Like if they're going to play basketball, they bring in their street clothes and their fancy sneakers or whatever, and they need a place to store them. So I'm really questioning about that. And then where is the bathroom? Because you're running up and down the gym. You have to go to the bathroom afterwards. Is it anywhere in that area, like where the dance and teach dining is? I don't understand that gym scenario.
Okay.
I like that because it really is. I don't know. Do other people feel this way about a gym not having a bathroom available and a changing room available of some way? Like, will that room have like storage or lockers in it so that they can put their clothes in there? So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, Lorraine, that's a great point. And it's going to sound like an excuse, but it's honestly not. This is really just testing if we can arrange the building and the spaces. That community wing will need its own set of bathrooms. If it's used on the weekends, you don't want, the public going all the way down to the middle of the building where the lobby is to use bathrooms. And then I'm more than happy to interact with the school department and figure out exactly how they would deal, even if we have to accommodate some more, more specific area changing.
Okay, we have Peter.
Yeah, and this is, I know this is very preliminary, but in the previous slide, you had mentioned about one of the things we needed to do is eliminate 3 sped classrooms. But was that accounted for on this schematic, or is that still to be eliminated off this?
This assumes that first of all, Peter, there are a ton of other special ed spaces throughout the whole building.
Yeah. Okay.
These 3 that are down on the first floor, actually there's 4 because there's life, OT and
But
PT,
still.
are all, just kind of because of mobility issues.
Yep.
So as we go up through the other floor plans, there are a ton of other special ed spaces, but we do not have those 3 classrooms in this concept.
Okay.
We've assumed that they're not occurring.
Okay, and what you identified as OT, PT, speech, that's the dedicated therapies, because those things are done not in a specific classroom. So I think you answered the question anyways, that this does account for some of the elimination that you needed to do. So appreciate that.
Yes, we did the reductions, and then we did the test fit.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question, Jim Ridley here, again about the gym facilities? I assume that they're gonna be having gym all day, classes for gym, and like Lorraine's point, if the students are going in there, they will need a place to change.
Again, we have a long way to go on it, and we will, we'll try to fit something in, within that 176,000 square feet. A lot of times we can, but.
I think what I'm noticing here is just a test fits. We're not designing this right now, but since you're showing us these space, these design question will occur.
Oh, yeah. No, it's totally.
I think
fine.
maybe it should have just been blocked, just block drawings instead of actually naming these location. I think it probably would have helped.
I
Perhaps.
think it's good to get the feedback now too. If you see a space that's missing and, questioning it.
Absolutely. So the upper 3 floors start to have these classroom neighborhoods. So if you look at the lower right-hand corner of the project, there's a red oval, and there are 3 general subjects: social studies, English, math, I think they call it ELA, and then a science lab. So those spaces that are called ELS, it's a 400 square foot, square, but the thought is that it's not a separate room. Somewhere within that neighborhood, the corridor gets a little bit larger, and it's kind of a common space for that neighborhood. There are 1,100 students in the building. There are going to be 3 of these neighborhoods for each grade level. So there's 9 in total. And the idea is to break this big school into smaller little communities. So there happens to be one of these neighborhoods on this floor. Above in the green oval, sorry, Lynn.
Sorry.
And the green oval, that's one of the special ed spaces. There's 4 large classrooms. It's for intellectually impaired students, but they could be of any grade level, but they would have the same 4 subjects. And, there would be a neighborhood created around that that's another small learning community, so to speak. Then you can see the media center over on the far left. That's going to be facing the pond also. And you can see a lot of shared programs like, health or the AV studio or one of the fifth majors. One of the things I don't like about this is the music classrooms on an upper level. And so honestly, going forward, I'd like to try to find a way to get those down so that they're connected to the stage, or at least closer to the stage. So Lynn, if you wanted to, and then there's 2 floors above. I've only circled one of the classroom neighborhoods, number 8 in the upper left, but you can see the numbers 5, 6, and 7. So there's 4 of these classroom neighborhoods up on the upper floor. And then you, in the blue oval, you have kind of the core facilities. Again, you have fifth majors, the toilet cores, and a couple, in this case, a couple art rooms fit up there. And the top floor, which is the next slide, is the same layout. Oh, this is the 4th floor. I'm sorry. So I get, believe me, we're not just going to build a bunch of boxes. We're going to create architecture. And, first we just wanted to make sure we could fit it on the site and then fit it within 4 floors if possible. So, we're confident that we can, house this program on this site and arrange it in a way that's going to work best for the educational program. So a more technical exploration that's going on at the same time is we're on this site. The solid purple line that's running through the property is the MWRA water line, and so we're going to be limited. We don't want to cross it. We really don't want to get too near to it, which is why we wanted to make sure our footprint worked. So we're going to be kind of working to the lower left, so to speak, where all these circles are. The purple dash lines are simply setbacks. We're trying to stay a certain amount of space away from the MWRA line. The orange line doesn't mean too much, but it's stormwater lines that are under there. There's a I don't know, catch basin, and then it goes through these orange pipes and it ends up in the pond. So part of this project is actually going to be probably relocating part of that infrastructure. But what we're doing right now is we have a series of test borings and then test pits. And a boring is a tube that'll go down until it hits, bedrock. A test pit is you take an excavator and you scoop down 8 or 10 feet. Because what we're trying to understand here is we know that this site was filled. It used to be a pond. So we need to understand what we have to do with our foundations to hold up this building. The soils are not, virgin, wonderful gravel. They're gonna need some special foundations. So the test borings we've circled, and number 1 is in yellow. It's in the lower center, I guess. We went down 160 feet until we found bedrock, something that we could support the building on. And to put it into perspective, at Thurgood Marshall, we had a ton of piles, and they all hit and were supported on bedrock. But at Thurgood Marshall, we were doing piles that were about 100 feet long. So this is going to have, it's going to be a challenge with the bedrock so far down. We are currently, the other yellow circle, which is TB5, test boring 5. We're going to go down as far as we can and see if the bedrock's that deep in this area also. So far, they've only been there one day and they're down about 49 feet. So that's kind of ongoing. And then in the kind of light green circles, we did other borings, but we didn't, because that 160-foot one took 4 days, was very time consuming. So these other circles in the light green, we're just taking those down until we get to the bottom of the fill. We don't have time to go down and find with bedrock and all those locations. But we do know we need to understand the fill and what's in it and what it's going to cost to dispose of it if necessary. So there's about 40 to 50 feet of what they call urban fill, that they filled in the pond with. And then below that is another 10 to 12 feet of organics, which are kind of spongy, and you can't necessarily put a footing on those. But we did need to understand the volume, like how much fill is in this place. And so these 4 test borings help us with that. So that's all ongoing. We don't have results, and more importantly, we don't have recommendations from the geotechnical engineer yet on what it might take to support the building on these soils. That's really the question we're trying to answer. Lynn, I think the next slide has a couple of pictures. On the left there, that's when they were doing boring number 1, and it's a very, it's, I don't know, a 6-inch diameter pipe that they just drive down and keep extending and driving down. And what they do is you can see the soil that they took out of there. At various strata, they're analyzing what's in the soil, what the soil is made up of. And then on the right there, you can see kind of a little blemish on the grass. That's one of the test pits. You can kind of see a few in the background also. So as I said, that's kind of what we're doing, and the goal is to find out what we're going to have to do for the foundations.
We have a question, Mayor McGee.
Thanks, Lynn. I know it's preliminary and we're getting all the data, but obviously what happened over at the Lynn Classical site I think needs to inform us as we move forward to make sure that recognizing the site and then the different pieces of it, the fill and all of that, and going down deeply, just want to ensure that as we're going through this and all that data comes in, that we're going to have to ensure that we build this to not have the same kind of impact we had over at the Classical site. So I just want to bring that up. I know we're in preliminary. This is preliminary, and all of the information is being gathered, but I think that just needs to be on top of all of our minds as we move forward. We're going to make a major investment here. We want to make sure that we do what we have to do to ensure that it's done right. So, and I know that that's everyone's goal, but I think we just need to continue to recognize that the challenges we faced once Classical began to sink and created a whole nother set of problems for the city.
Agree.
Lorraine? One thing, piggybacking on what Mayor McGee has just said, is we did discuss in the very beginning, we could possibly have a 2 building with a bridge over it. So we may not have to go to the 165-foot area. We could go a little closer to where the test pits are, or where it was less, and have it going towards the tennis courts with the bridge going over it. That could be an option, maybe. I'm not quite sure. I'm asking you, Lynn.
That's a great idea, Lorraine. Our initial instincts on it were that the bridge option was going to be more expensive.
Okay.
But the soils might be better up there, and maybe depending what we have to do for whatever portion is on the lower plateau here, maybe we should really run it both ways and see. We might save some expensive foundations on Magnolia at the expense of you know, spending a little bit more money on the building, bridging over.
I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Karen?
Yes, I kind of wanted to jump off of what Lorraine had said. I was thinking of that original or one of those options with the bridge over to the upper level as well, especially where both Lorraine and Jim had brought up the need for some type of a PE locker room. And, you know, is it possible that that we could maybe consider that option if we did need to fit a locker room, a bathroom closer to the gym, especially considering that this should and could be community space and even, you know, something used by the greater community. If we're going to host basketball tournaments, whether it's within the city or inviting other towns, I think that that it's a bad look for us, for this committee to go forward and build a gym that doesn't have those kind of accommodations when you're bringing other people from the community or the greater community in.
As I said before, we have to look at various layouts, and that certainly should be one of them. We are confined by this site, so it may be the only option is to bridge over to that area. Any other questions before we talk about the schedule? Okay, we have our next SBC meeting set for March 15th. Unless there's anything happening on that night that precludes us from meeting on that night, we'll go ahead and get that set up for the next meeting. Okay. And then just a quick look at what our preferred schematic report schedule is. We have to be complete with the preferred schematic report by the 27th and submit it to MSBA. That's their deadline for meeting their June 21st MSBA Board of Directors meeting for approval to move forward to schematic design. So that would require us to approve the PSR for submission to MSBA at the April 19th SBC meeting. This may require that we need to meet one additional time in addition to our monthly meeting schedule. We'll come back to you at the next meeting and talk about the need to maybe insert another meeting in there, because we really want to make sure we go through what the cost of each of the options that we'll be presenting are, so that everybody understands and that everybody has plenty of time to ask questions and before we ask them to vote on a preferred solution. So we make our April 27th submission to MSBA, and they have two facilities assessment subcommittee meeting dates between the submission on the 27th and the Board of Directors meeting on the June 21st. So we'll either be scheduled to attend the May 17th or the May 24th facilities assessment subcommittee meeting to present our project to them. So that's the key milestones as we move forward. And again, it's likely that we'll be adding another SBC meeting in addition to our monthly meeting in order to accomplish all that we need to accomplish for this phase of the work. And that's really all I had for tonight. Does anybody have any questions before we adjourn for tonight?
Before we adjourn for the night, I just wanted to add that I appreciate the team's work on refining the plan there. I think I want to be clear with the committee that, we're facing some headwinds with the costs, the way that costs are going. And it's not unique to this project. It's not unique to our community doing schools. It's happening to other school projects around the state and obviously having in construction generally. But given the MSBA reimbursement that we talked about this meeting and we talked about last meeting, that presents a real challenge for the city's finances. And I can tell you that I could not be more committed to this project. My administration could not be more committed to this project. I know all of you are incredibly committed to the project. I know that's how my colleagues on the school committee and city council feel. So we're going to find a way, but it's going to require us to be in conversations with the state about how to figure this out. So I want to just make sure that you are aware that we are working closely with the state delegation to facilitate those conversations to try to figure out how we can handle the rising costs.
And we'll get to talking more about cost as we move forward. Again, it's very difficult to put cost out there until we have as much of the, until we have more of the preliminary investigations in, so we know that we're covering all cost. It's hard to put numbers out and then at the next meeting raise them because test results come back that requires us to do so. So, but we will begin talking about cost at the next meeting. Lorraine?
That's a good point. That's a good point. And I think part of the reason just raising it now is to make sure that you're aware that we will be coming back with that. And we'll also keep you in the loop about how those conversations with the state delegation and the state are going. Because I'm sure that at some point we're going to be making an ask and we want you all to be aware of that. And we also are going to ask for your help in making that ask. So remember, Kayla.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you, Mayor Nicholson, is there are a few things, the millionaire's tax that a lot of us in Lynn fought for, that. And I don't know how Governor Haley is going to distribute those monies. A large portion is supposed to go to education, and maybe we could put pressure on them if you want to let us know how. And then feds, I think they have infrastructure money. I'm not sure if it's for schools, but this committee can put pressure on people because they've been here in our district. They've gone to Pickering. They've told us how we need to have a new building, and they've supported us verbally. So we need that, to support you, support all of us to get those done so that they send the money that we need to get our new schools done. So thank you. Anything you need, just let us know.
Thank you. No, it's a great point. I really appreciate that. And I think we've had some sort of early conversations with the state delegation to try to get the lay of land here, but there's certainly going to be a push and we're certainly going to be asking for all of your help. I absolutely agree that there's there's some options out there, and this project is just so important to our community and to our future, and I know that we'll find a way to rally to make that ask in the right way. So thank you.
Anthony?
So Anthony, thank you for being here. Anthony's not on the school building committee, but I will certainly be happy to talk to Anthony after.
I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Of course. And it's nothing personal, Anthony. It's just the way the open meetings work. So.
Of course, with Zoom, it's a little, I wasn't sure what the.
No, yeah, that's fine. We can chat after. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anthony's from the Daily Item, in case anyone didn't know. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, couldn't see his whole name, so I wasn't
It's
sure.
fine, it's fine. Yeah, yeah. Any other questions? All right. Again, thank you all for all your help, the great thoughts tonight to help this project. We really appreciate it. So thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good job.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Good job.